How do you measure the worth of one night? Not by the hours passed or the money exchanged, but by what shifts inside you when someone unexpected enters your carefully controlled world and cracks it open. Luke Harrison didn't believe in messes. He didn't believe in accidents or spontaneous love or even the concept of fate. He believed in architecture lines, structure, precision. Every project he designed had order, symmetry, and purpose. Nothing in his life happened without calculation, except her. It was late October in Manhattan, that time when the city begins to smell like rain and roasted chestnuts. Luke was at the Crimson Quill, a bar he only visited when he wanted to disappear, but still enjoy a decent glass of scotch. He nursed his third glass of Macallan like a man hoping alcohol might soften the weight of an unwanted family obligation. His mother had just called with her usual mixture of guilt and polished manipulation, reminding him of his parents' 40th wedding anniversary. And of course, she'd invited Isabelle Dubois, daughter of a business associate, beautiful, predictable, and absolutely not Luke's type. Luke didn't dislike Isabel. He disliked what she represented expectations. She was the kind of woman his mother believed he should want, but being around her made him feel like a block of concrete, hollow and heavy at the same time. That's when his eyes landed on her. Amelia Bellwether moved through the bar like a breeze that didn't apologize for its direction. She wasn't the most glamorous woman in the room. She didn't need to be. Her hair was tied up in a messy ponytail that somehow looked elegant, and her smile had a kind of resilience that no expensive education could teach. She didn't laugh for tips. She laughed because she found things genuinely funny, like when a drunk finance bro made a joke that wasn't. Luke didn't know her name then. He only knew that she felt real in a room full of pretense. And when a crazy thought came to him, what if I paid someone to be my girlfriend for a night he didn't think of actresses or escorts? He thought of her. Now let's pause here. You might be asking, seriously, he tried to rent a date like a car? And yes, it sounds absurd. But let's be honest, don't we all create social armor sometimes? We pretend, we posture, we bring plus ones to weddings, not because we're in love, but because we're tired of being the only single at the table. Luke just made his armor transactional. When he approached Amelia after her shift, she didn't immediately say yes. Her first reaction, laughter. That sharp, almost mocking laugh that people use when life throws them something utterly ridiculous. But he explained no strings, no touching, no romance. Just act like his girlfriend at a party. $2,000 for a few hours of conversation and a little social deception. She looked at him, eyebrows raised, and asked, "That's a real offer." "It is," he said, "and you're perfect for it." Now here's the thing about Amelia. She wasn't desperate, but she was practical. Her laptop had just died mid-semester. Her rent was climbing, and student loans were drowning her like a slow tide. So she said yes, not because she believed in fairy tales, but because she believed in survival. Have you ever had a moment where pretending led to something unexpectedly real? Please comment below and like this video if you believe the best love stories start with honesty. Subscribe our channel now for more powerful story-based videos every day. The next day they met on Fifth Avenue to pick a dress. Luke offered a designer boutique. Amelia chose simplicity, an emerald silk gown not flashy but graceful. It didn't scream money, it whispered self-respect. Over coffee afterward, they built their lie together. How they met at an art gallery in Chelsea. How they bonded over a mutual love of absurdist theater and street food. It was just a script. Yet somehow it didn't feel like acting. Here's something they don't tell you about lies. The best ones aren't made up. They're just truths you haven't admitted yet. Saturday arrived. The mansion in Long Island gleamed with curated perfection. Luke's parents were the kind of couple who looked like they belonged in a wedding magazine, his mother polished and eloquent, his father the strong, silent type who spoke with deliberate affection. And into this carefully constructed world walked Amelia on Luke's arm, poised and radiant, without an ounce of pretense. She greeted his family with warm confidence. When Luke's mother tried to probe for details, Amelia didn't flinch. She quoted Jane Austen and talked about her favorite plays. She was intelligent, grounded, and utterly disarming. And then, of course, Isabel appeared. Perfect hair, perfect smile, designer dress. She floated in with the air of someone used to winning by default. But when she tried to corner Luke, Amelia stepped in not by clinging or showing jealousy, but by being herself. She redirected the conversation with wit, asking about a sculpture in the garden and recalling their first date at the art gallery. Isabel, unarmed by authenticity, retreated. It's easy to dismiss this as a rom-com moment, but in real life, authenticity is a weapon, not the kind that wounds, but the kind that disarms. Amelia wasn't trying to prove anything. That's what made her so compelling. As the evening progressed, Luke started to forget they were pretending. He found himself reaching for her hand without thinking. Not for the act, but for comfort. They laughed. They shared glances that lasted a second too long. It was all make-believe. Wasn't it? At one point, they slipped out onto the balcony. The same moon that had witnessed countless lies now watched something very real. They talked about writing about fear, about the pressures of success. Luke opened up in ways he hadn't in years. No filters, no scripts. Here's a truth that stings: most people don't really see us. They see a version of us that makes sense to them. But Amelia saw Luke, not the architect, not the son, not the eligible bachelor, just, Luke. When the night ended, he drove her home. He handed her the money like they agreed. She took it, but her eyes lingered for a moment longer than expected. Then she left and Luke was alone again. But something had changed. He tried to tell himself it was done, that it was just business. But her laugh, her insights, her presence lingered. She wasn't just a momentary escape. She had become a question mark in the blueprint of his life. Days passed. Logic told him to let it go. But emotion, raw, inconvenient emotion, pushed back. He needed to see her again. So he did something out of character. He volunteered to speak at a student conference at Columbia, knowing she studied there. A calculated coincidence. And fate, if you believe in that sort of thing, rewarded him. He saw her reading under an oak tree, hair loose, absorbed in a book. No waitress uniform. No borrowed persona. Just Amelia. She looked up startled. "Mr. Harrison," he smiled. "Luke." And just like that, the imaginary wall between them crumbled. He didn't come with a contract this time. No payment. No deal. Just honesty. He told her how the night had affected him, how it had stirred something inside he hadn't expected, something real. Amelia listened with a curious expression, arms folded, unsure whether to trust this sudden vulnerability from a man who once offered her money for affection. But his eyes were sincere. There was no act in his tone now, no charm, routine, just quiet truth. "I want to see you again," he said. No scripts, no backstory, just dinner. A real date. She paused. Not because she didn't want to say yes, but because she needed to believe that this wasn't another transaction in disguise. And perhaps, against her better judgment, she did believe him. They began slowly. One dinner turned into two. Two turned into weekend walks in the park, visits to secondhand bookstores, and long rambling conversations about dreams, regrets, and absurd YouTube videos that made them laugh until they cried. There were no grand declarations, no movie-style montages, just small, consistent moments of trust being built brick by brick. But nothing worth having is ever simple. Luke's fear of commitment, an old ghost that had chased away previous relationships, didn't vanish overnight. There were days when he grew distant without reason. Days when Amelia, despite her calm exterior, felt the sting of doubt. Was she just a Phase A story he'd get bored of once it stopped being novel? She remembered her best friend Chloe's warning: don't fall for the polished ones. They don't know how to hold anything messy like real love. Amelia didn't need flowers or gifts. She needed reliability. And there were moments when Luke struggled to give that. But what made their story different wasn't the absence of struggle, it was the willingness to confront it. When Luke finally introduced her to his mother as his serious partner, Eleanor Harrison was surprisingly thrilled. Not because Amelia fit into some checklist of elegance or pedigree, but because she remembered that sharp-witted girl in the green dress who talked about Jane Austen and had made an entire party forget about Isabelle Dubois. Still, life wasn't a straight line, and Amelia's own dreams began to call her away. She got accepted into a prestigious year-long writing program in London, an opportunity she dreamed about since her undergrad days. It was the kind of chance that changes lives, but it also meant leaving Luke and New York and everything they'd started to build. When she told him the news, Luke froze. The old Luke, the one who avoided vulnerability like it was fire, resurfaced. He grew cold, silent. He didn't say congratulations. He didn't ask when she was leaving. What he did say quietly, painfully was, "Do you really have to go? I mean, if you love someone, shouldn't you stay?" It cut her like glass. Love wasn't a chain. It was wings. And in that moment, Luke's words sounded more like possession than partnership. She walked away, eyes burning with hurt, and he let her. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to care the right way. For days, he wandered his empty penthouse like a ghost. Every corner reminded him of her, the coffee mug she left on his shelf, the paperback with a folded corner on his nightstand, the laughter that once filled his space. And then one evening, while sketching a new design, he stopped midline. It was like a dam breaking. He'd been selfish. He realized he hadn't lost her because of distance or ambition. He lost her because he let fear speak louder than love. He had tried to hold her back instead of standing behind her. So he did the one thing pride had always kept him from doing: he apologized. Not through a grand gesture, not on some stage, but face to face. He showed up at her apartment with no flowers, no gifts, just honesty. "You should go," he said. "You should live that dream. And if I have to wait a year or 5, I'll wait. Because this time I'm not walking away." Tears welled in her eyes. Not because of what he said, but because of what he meant. And so Amelia left for London. They wrote letters, yes, actual letters, not just texts. They called when time zones allowed. Their connection didn't weaken, it matured. They learned how to love without possession, how to stay without being near. When she returned a year later, she wasn't the same girl he had met in that bar. She was a published author with her first collection of short stories, Fragments of New York, debuting on the bestseller list. At her book launch, she wore a deep blue dress, elegant and unassuming. Her name echoed through the bookstore, her readers lining up to get her signature. Luke stood quietly in the back, not needing to claim space, just watching, his chest full of pride. Later that night, he took her back to the mansion on Long Island, the place where it all began. The garden was still lit with soft lights. The air carried that same late autumn chill. But this time there were no guests, no act, just them. He led her to the balcony, and without a word he knelt down, pulled out a small velvet box, and opened it. "I asked you once to be my fake girlfriend for one night," he said. "Now I'm asking you something real. I want to spend every night of the rest of my life with you." "Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. She nodded, unable to speak at first, and then whispered, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Their story didn't end there, of course. Life doesn't tie itself into neat bows, but it did settle into something real. On Luke's desk now sits a framed photo of their engagement right next to her first published book and a model of the community library he designed in her honor. Their worlds, once separate, have merged in quiet, beautiful ways. And that brings us here, to you. Because maybe you felt like Amelia once, undervalued, underestimated, juggling dreams, and bills unsure if anyone would see you beyond your job or your circumstances. Or maybe you're more like Luke, someone who's always relied on logic and control, terrified of losing face, even if it means losing love. But here's the truth their story teaches us. Love isn't about perfection. It's not about timing or pedigree or planning the perfect moment. It's about showing up messy, vulnerable, unprepared, and saying, "I see you, and I'm not walking away." Sometimes the best relationships aren't the ones that begin with fireworks, but the ones that begin with honesty, with choice, with one imperfect night that turns into something extraordinary. So if you're waiting for the perfect sign to take a chance on someone, on yourself, maybe this is it. Because like Luke and Amelia, you don't have to be ready. You just have to be real. Thanks for staying with us until the end. If this story moved you, made you think, consider sharing it with someone who might need it today. Subscribe our channel for more powerful stories about love, self-growth, and human connection, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next emotional journey.